He's one of our favorite people to talk to, friend of the program. Usually hear from him on this show between January and April, but we're going to talk to him now because there's a lot of unknowns in the National Football League. I thought this would be a good time to get to a lot of that stuff when it comes to the draft with Dane Brugler, who covers the NFL draft for The Athletic. Dane, you got Schmelk and Fiegels here.
Hi,
First off, I hope you and your family, everybody out there, are safe and healthy.
Yeah, we are. We're doing okay. It's
good.
Obviously weird times. Hopefully, same for you guys as well. It's just trying to stay positive during this uncertain times. And for me, we don't know what's going to happen with the season. We don't know, what the next few months are going to look like. But somehow, some way, there will be a draft. And so that's what I'm clutching to.
No question.
The work I'm doing right now, scouting all these guys, watching all the junior tape, I know it's not for nothing, because somehow, some way, there will be a draft next spring. We don't know what it's going to look like between now and then, but somehow, some way, we will get there.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of layers of the onion to unpeel here, Dane. But first of all, you've been putting out some of your prospect lists for 2021. We'll touch on the players briefly at the end here. This is more of a logistics interview, but tell the folks how they can find your work first and foremost.
Yeah, you can find it on The Athletic, doing my positional previews right now, going through each position, ranking top 20 seniors, top 10 underclassmen, a lot of analysis, and basically just enough to get people introduced to the players they need to know in this upcoming draft class.
Awesome. All right. First things first. I guess it's a loaded question, so good luck. Are we going to have Power 5 conference football in the fall? Is there a chance it's going to be in the spring? What do you think?
Hopefully. I think spring, talking to people at these different programs, they definitely have a contingency plan in place if they need to go to the spring. It's not talked about a lot because that's not what we want to see. That's not what schools and programs, that's not what they want to see, because it's going to be a nightmare with trying to figure everything out. So they're going to try and do everything they can for football to happen in the fall, and it's going to look very different. It's not going to happen right on time. It's going to be delayed a little bit. We're not really going to have conferences playing each other. It's going to, the SEC is going to stay within the SEC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12. The ACC left the door open a little bit for some of those traditional rivalries. Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, but it doesn't sound like the SEC is interested in doing those things. So it might just be the ACC plus Notre Dame this year. The Big 12, they're open to one non-conference game this year. So, we're going to see maybe, Texas versus Louisiana Lafayette, games like that. So each conference is different in their approach and how they're trying to do things, which is really the big problem with college football is, the NCAA is more of a governing body. It's not it's not like the NFL where you have a commissioner and league office and, they make a lot of the decisions. It's not like that in college football, where each conference is kind of looking out for their best interest and doing what they feel is best. So I think, the preferred method is we will have football this fall. They're going to do everything they can. Hopefully we do see football this fall in college football. It's going to look a lot different.
Dane, so I have a son that's in college football at Rutgers. He's a junior there. I'm getting reports, every day that there's positive tests here. They're shutting down the programs. It's in my mind that they're going to try to make this work. Unlike the NFL where they're testing these players every single day. These guys they're making money, so they're a little bit more, I would say, responsible. I just don't understand how they're going to do this without getting positive tests weekly from these players, especially on some of the campuses where they're allowing students back in. So, is that contingency plan for the spring pretty? You think that these guys? I guess what I'm asking you, I have a feeling that the season will start, but it's going to get shut down. Would they do that and then continue into the spring, or would they just shut the whole thing down and be finished? Do you think?
It's such an unprecedented situation. Unfortunately, there's bad news coming out of Rutgers camp with some of those positive tests, and I can only imagine, for you as a parent, obviously it just has a different, you have a different perspective on this,
100%.
and it's really it's tough because everyone wants to see college football played this fall, but these players are not they're not paid.
That's right.
There's more things going on. Not every campus is going to allow students on campus, but if you play football, it's a little different. You will be allowed on campus, and so we treat these guys differently. It's tough because people will say, oh, it's just for the president and the administrator, for them to line their pockets, and they know football is money making, but it's more than that, because without college football season, there's no swimming season, there's no softball season, because college football helps pay for all of that. And so it's such a complicated conversation that you
Sure.
hope that these guys have the best, these administrators and the decision makers, you hope they have the best intention for these football players. But if we do have to go to a spring season, then that's where things get really interesting. And from my perspective, as an evaluator of these players going to the next level, we've already seen a few players opt out of the season. If we go to the spring, we're going to see hundreds of players decide, hey,
Done.
I'm not gonna play in the spring. I'm gonna prepare for the combine. I'm going to get ready for the draft. I'm going to whether it's the Senior Bowl, the combine, these different things. They're going to go with that direction instead of trying to play out a season in the spring.
Now, do you think, Dane, that if we already have some of the smaller conferences and some of the schools on the FCS level going to play in the spring, Ivy League, things like that, if some of these Power 5 conferences, all of them, end up playing in the spring too, do you think there'll be some type of agreement between college football as a general term and the NFL, where they'll move the combine and the draft back to maybe make it more likely that fewer of these people do opt out? How flexible do you think the NFL is going to be in working with college football to try to get some type of representative season to make the evaluation process a little bit more honest?
And that is a great question that I think we've seen in the past, how the NFL has not really been very cooperative when it comes to the draft in terms of moving things. And, they have a set schedule. That's what they're going to do, and they feel confident about that. And so it's going to get really interesting if they can do it on you look at their calendar, there's really nothing huge going on in May and June that they couldn't maybe move it back a little bit. And, there could be, whether the All-Star games, the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Game, NFLPA, you could, incrementally move these things back, move the combine back a little bit, move the pro days back a little bit. And it's not just for college football's sake. It could help the NFL in terms of, talk about their scouts and their evaluators and everything. It'll help them keep them more safe, because maybe by then we'll have more of a grasp on this thing and be able to better attack it. So it's not just something that I think they need to help out college football. It could vastly help the NFL too in terms of their ability to evaluate this class. This is unprecedented. We've obviously never seen anything like this. At this point, I think every option is on the table. How willing the NFL will be to be cooperative and work hand in hand with college football, I think that's something we don't know yet, and I'm not sure. And it's going to be weird, because what happens when God forbid Rutgers continues to have say Rutgers has bad outbreaks, and say other Big Ten teams do. The Big Ten can't play, but the SEC still plays. The ACC still plays. These different conferences could be all different in terms of how if they shut down, if they try to move to the spring. Like you mentioned, we've already seen that with the FCS level and different conferences. Not every conference is going to do the same thing. So if the SEC plays this fall and the Big Ten doesn't, that puts the NFL in a weird position. Are we just going to do this just for the Big Ten? So there's just so many different avenues this could go that it's hard to have a great answer right now. It's just, I think every option's on the table.
Dan, real quickly, I know what you do is very important to a lot of different people, including, people in the buildings through the National Football League, through your analysis and things like that. To me, when you've got 32 first rounders every single year, I would imagine that a lot of those guys, if something is like this is going to start getting closer and closer to the season being, they don't know if this is going to happen, the opt out. We've already seen a couple guys opt out that are going to be potential first round draft picks. Do you see this maybe becoming a common trend here in the next month or so?
I do, and I don't think it's going to be something where NFL teams are going to ding these guys and say, "Oh, they don't love the game." It's not. It's not that. It's not.
Yeah.
You know, we went through this a couple of years ago when Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey they skipped the bowl game.
Yeah.
And, this is a little different. I think NFL teams they understand the decisions these kids have to make, and Rashad Bateman, the really talented receiver from Minnesota. He announced this morning he'll be opting out of the season, preparing for the NFL draft. Caleb Farley, a corner from Virginia Tech, he's doing the same thing. And Farley, his mom died of cancer not too long ago. You know, he spoke about family and how he did not want to go through that again. And it's something where you don't blame these guys with all the uncertainty swirling. These guys are first-round players. I feel very confident that Caleb Farley will be one of the first corners drafted. His tape is outstanding. He is just scratching the surface because he was a high school quarterback. But what he's shown so far, I feel very confident that he's going to be a high draft pick. Same thing with Rashad Bateman. He's in that Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen type of mold as a wide receiver. He's not a burner. He's a 4-5 athlete, but he's very savvy. He understands releases, his route. How to leverage the coverage. So I have, it's going to be a pretty big wide receiver class, but I feel very confident Rashad Bateman will be one of the first ones drafted. It's going to be interesting when we have some of these lesser-known players who are more second, third, fourth-round players. Are they going to opt out? Are they going to say, hey, well, I'm better off just going? It's kind of just the tip of the iceberg right now, and we just don't know how big that iceberg under the water. We just don't know how big that part is.
Dan, you kind of mentioned this in one of the other answers. Are college teams going to even allow NFL scouts to go to their campus and do what they usually do, or is this going to be like we're looking at tape, which kind of in some ways eliminates the point of having regional scouts, right?
Yeah, well, and that's something that's been discussed a lot. Just in my, not only am I just watching tape, but I'm on the phone with these guys, talking to my buddies throughout the league, and they're wondering what their schedules are going to look like this fall. Because I think each college is going to be different with how they do things. Some of these. They've talked to me about some of these colleges setting up like a specific room where, the scouts will go and be able to set up monitors for them and maybe bring in players one by one. You try to social distance responsibly, let them go out to practice, sit in the stands. So there's ways around it. But it's putting a lot on these scouts to ask them to, be going to different places every week and every day, where not every college is going to do it the same way. So, in the NFL, they've got a system down that it's heard a lot of positive things from players and coaches, how they feel confident that the right measures are being put in place. College is just a little bit different because you have more players, you have different people making different decisions on each campus, and so it's more of the wild, wild west. And so you're hoping for the best, that these guys have the best intentions for these players and everyone that's going to be coming through campus.
Yeah, Dave, no question about it. I want to get your take on the rookie class this year because, you kind of track this stuff. We had Bill Polian on our show last week, and he talked about if he's a GM or a coach, trying to put his roster together, unless you're a first or second round pick, maybe a third round pick, he's not going to expect much of anything from you this year. In the pros, given there's been no offseason, you're going to have basically 3.5 weeks of practices before you play in a game. What do you think this transition is going to be like for the 2020 rookie class as they try to contribute their first year in the NFL, basically meeting their coaches for the first time in person this week?
Right. It's tough. And for some positions more than others, you talk about quarterback and being able to digest the playbook and understanding what is expected of you from the coaching staff. Certain positions are tougher than others. I think wide receiver is one of the toughest positions to make that immediate transition because, you're seeing more man coverage. You have to have that perfect chemistry down with the quarterback. And so for these receivers who are not going to get a ton of time to throw with these quarterbacks, you wonder if, this was an historic class. We had more receivers drafted in the first 2 rounds than ever before. But how many of those receivers are going to be able to make that instant impact that, we would normally see from, in 2014 when we had Mike Evans and Odell Beckham and those guys that really hit the ground running. it's just we're probably not going to see that this year. Now, talent wins out, so I think talent will get their way on the field, and we'll see those guys perform. But I don't think there's any doubt about it. We will see probably lower output from these rookies than we've ever seen before, and the reason pretty self-explanatory with the lack of practice time, I mean, I know these guys have Zoom and they've been talking, they've been going over playbooks and things like that, but it's different when you have, the tangible experience on the field and practice and things like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out on Sundays.
Dane, give us a thumbnail of the 2021 class, strengths, weaknesses, who you think, maybe if there's a consensus top 1, top 3, just give me your big picture consensus on the 2021 draft class before we say goodbye.
Well, I think, the receiver class, I mentioned how strong it was last year. This receiver class could be even better, which is saying something. Jamar Chase from LSU at the top. You got the 2 Alabama guys, which, it sounds like deja vu with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs last year. This year, Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle from Alabama. Both those guys look like first-round picks. Trevor Lawrence, he's the early favorite, the quarterback from Clemson, to be that top pick. And then actually, a lot of people talk about Justin Fields. My second quarterback is Trey Lance from North Dakota State, the rare FCS quarterback who's a top prospect. He's only a redshirt sophomore. He's going to have a really interesting decision to make coming up here because he really needs more time at the college level, but he's already being talked about as a potential top 10 pick. So that'll be really interesting. I just posted my pass rush preview today on The Athletic, and I think that's one of the stronger positions this year. A lot of talent there. So a lot of interesting talent. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But, like I said before at the top, the draft is going to happen some way, somehow. And so I'm just kind of clinging to that as the motivation moving forward.
Maybe you'll get a couple extra months if they move it back to June, huh? That'll give you a little more prep time.
Exactly. A chance to see these guys more. And I mean, that's what we were hoping for last year when, without the pro days or anything like that. But yeah, I think every option's on the table at this point. So we just, like just with life, we kind of have to be open-minded about this stuff right now.
We're all taking it day by day, Dane. Those that are flexible have the best chance to succeed.
Yep, there you go. Well said, John.